Well, hello again. We're in the final straight, and this is our final session for the Autism at Work Virtual Summit of 2021. I'm Matt Ormiston, and I'll be your host for the afternoon. We have had some absolutely amazing keynote presentations this summit, providing great insight and education into how we can achieve sustainable employment and programs, supporting and celebrating neurodiverse people in the workplace. And I'm excited to hear from our final speaker, Lee Corless from JPMorgan. JPMorgan's story was highly influential as we shaped the ANZ Spectrum program and its ongoing success. I was astounded in hearing their journey, starting with 4 neurodiverse people, realizing productivity gains of 48%, and in the space of 4 years, expanding to encompass 170 people in 8 countries. It's just a truly inspiring situation, what they've done and how they have created sustainable employment within their organization. And to share more on this incredible story, we have Lee with us. Lee is a vice president at JPMorgan Chase & Co., where he is head of the Autism at Work program for Europe, Middle East and Africa, as well as the Asia Pacific region. An autistic self-advocate diagnosed in adulthood, Lee supports the advancement of adapting the workplace to embrace neurodiversity and encourage autistic individuals to seek employment. Lee is recognised internationally as a leader in the field of autism employment, and we are very thrilled that he's been able to join us this afternoon. But before I hand over to Lee, I'd like to let you know that you have the opportunity to submit questions for Lee by typing your questions into the Q&A pane. You can access that pane by clicking on the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of your screen. Other people's questions will appear in the Q&A panel once they've been moderated. And if that question is of interest to you and you'd like to hear it answered, then you have the opportunity to upvote by clicking on the arrow beside it. We'll try and answer as many questions as we possibly can, depending on how many come through. We may not be able to get to all of them, but we'll do our best. Okay, that's it from me. We're going to play a short video about the JPMorgan Chase at Work program, and that'll be followed by Lee's presentation.
Ever since I was 6 years old, I felt that I was different.
People notice I don't do things the same way as them.
Most autistic people have anxiety. We think that we mess stuff up and we kind of try and overcorrect.
I process my senses in a different way. So any kind of sensory input is very intense for me.
Whenever I hear conversations or very high-pitched sounds, that's very distressing for me.
I was told from a young age that people that were like me wouldn't go anywhere in life. I was put in different facilities, told that I wasn't going to be as smart as other people.
Before I joined JPMorgan Chase, I struggled to stick in the same job. I never felt in any of my previous jobs that I was utilizing my full potential.
There's a lot of strength in this specific neurological profile. Here in JPMorgan, I make reports and they help to make assessments about how much people we need or how are they performing.
I work for quality assurance. I'm good at figuring out how branching paths would work if I ran this, if I ran that.
I work in the wholesale client onboarding department. My teammates really appreciate that I have a really good memory for procedures and figures.
Working at JPMorgan has been a high point of my life. I enjoy working here and it has helped me pursue more goals in my life.
My managers are very proud of the work I'm doing. A project that I've been working on, it's been currently used around the world and that feels really, really good.
The Autism at Work program changed my life, and I would love for every autistic person to have the opportunities I've had here.
Well, good afternoon to you all. It's good morning here in the UK, and the short video you've seen there was obviously filmed before COVID actually hit, and that was 3 of our individuals that we have brought in through our program. So really insightful as to where we've come. First of all, thank you, Matt, for that introduction. I think you've just spoken about my entire speech, so we can go straight to questions, I think. So thank you very much for that. Just going to cover quickly what I'm going to cover today in the next 30 minutes, and hopefully, I know it's one of the last sessions of the program. I hope you can stay awake long enough to listen to me. I'm just going to give you a little introduction to myself, and then going to take you through a little bit more of the history of our program. I'm going to show you the benefits that we've seen of hiring individuals on the spectrum. Talk about our program successes over and above what you've just heard there. Cover the types of roles that we've seen, and just some guidance around what we look for when we're doing these kind of roles. Then I want to look at how we've made our program sustainable. So what is the support networks we put in place to ensure the individuals that we bring in are successful in the workplace. And then I want to just cover a little bit towards the end around how you can improve pipelines, and that looking at identifying support networks as people transition out of school, out of university, who should play a part in that. And I want to look at that from the perspective of what it looks like for what we class as neurotypicals, but then how it's different for a neurodiverse individual. Finally, I'm going to cover how companies can improve their recruitment process. Particularly, I will cover just what we've looked at, but it will hopefully give you some ideas of what to look for. And then we'll move on to the Q&A session. So a little bit about me. From these pictures here, you can see I'm a husband, I'm a father. I have 3 children, but my son, you can see there in that picture, is also on the spectrum, and there's a number of neurodiverse conditions and challenges, but he is an exceptionally bright lad. He would hate me having that photograph up, as he's now reached 19, and like any teenager, thinks he knows everything. One thing that this program and leading this program affords me is the opportunity to travel and live out some of the strange reasons that I like to travel. And in the top right, you can see there, I'm a huge golf fan, and was very fortunate just before the pandemic that one of the seminars was hosted by the Els Foundation. So I got to meet Ernie Els, and that was quite a good thing for me. One of our biggest programs that we did in the UK is in conjunction with Bath University, where we look at how we can support students transitioning into the workplace as they finish university. So the bottom left there is us actually beginning the program. It was opened. The lady in the middle, for those of you who don't know, is Her Royal Highness Sophie of Wessex, so that's Prince Edward's wife, who is on the board of Bath University. And the gentleman to the right of me is James Mahoney. For those of you who don't know, James Mahoney was the gentleman that started our program here at JPMorgan Chase. And finally, one of the things that I'm most proud of is in 2020, I was awarded an Autism Professional Award for my work that I've done and my speeches that I've done here in the UK by the National Autistic Society. So I'm a proud individual. I don't hide the fact that I'm on the spectrum, and we have a very unique program in that we are one of the only programs where an autistic individual is in one of the senior leadership roles. So we're very proud that that's the way that we're set up. So let's get into this. JPMorgan. As that video showed you, we started back in 2015 as a pilot program in our Delaware tech center. And the mission of our program is very simple, that we want to hire people into meaningful roles across our firm, really strong people who have a skill set that we want, who just happen to be on the autism spectrum. And we do that by working with not-for-profits, schools, colleges, universities, to ensure that we're building a great pipeline of these individuals. And now some of the individuals that you see on here are some of our first individuals that were brought into the firm. We started in 2015. We started in a Q&A role where we brought 4 individuals into our program. And those 4 individuals taught us quite a lot. We made an awful lot of assumptions right at the beginning, and quickly they helped us to overcome those assumptions. And the biggest assumption was that they would want to be in a room separate to everybody else and in a quiet space. We had them in a room and they actually were looking out saying, hey, why are we not out there with the rest of our colleagues? And we changed that very quickly. And as you can see in the bottom right there, they're out integrated in amongst everybody else, pretty much from about week 2, once we realized and got the feedback. So why do we do this? What are the benefits that we are seeing from hiring individuals on the spectrum? I'm not going to go through every one on here, but some of the key ones, in particularly when you are in a regulated environment as we are, we also move an awful lot of cash around the globe every day. In general, JPMorgan moves about $6 trillion a day around the globe. A lot of that is automated, but a lot of that also requires manual intervention for payments. So things like that need a lot of attention to detail. And what we've found is people on the spectrum have huge attention to detail, particularly when it comes to things that are very repetitive. So if you're having a huge amounts of payments put at you, or you're checking the same kind of things when you're doing quality assurance, individuals can tend to switch off a little bit and get a little bit bored, try and find shortcuts, and shortcuts lead to mistakes. We've not found that with our individuals that are on the spectrum. But equally, they're very creative. The individuals we brought in think differently, look at things differently, and it's all about making our teams very balanced, where you will have people who are very thorough in their way of thought, people who are very abstract. So our teams are becoming more and more diverse, and having people on the spectrum really adds another dynamic to our teams. People are able to absorb and retain facts for a longer period. And again, these are sort of generalizations, but again, this is what we have found as we've traveled through our history and over the 6 years now that we've been up and running. So where are we today? So today we've brought just over 245 employees in through the program in differing ways, whether they be full-time hires, whether they be coming in as apprenticeships, interns, all of those differing ways we've looked at in our firm. We operate now in 9 countries. That's not to say we don't give support in other countries. It's just where we've happened to have brought individuals in, and we are looking to expand beyond that. As you can see, we're on 21 plus sites across those countries. Many of those in the US is clearly where we have a high proportion of our individuals. But again, we have a lot of back office support out in our Asia and Pacific regions. And obviously the UK is another area that we do a lot of big hires. Although we started off in technology roles, so QA roles, we're now in 40 plus job families, and we will look at some of those, and I'll raise some examples for you as we go through of really good ones. What we're also very, very good at is training and getting training out across there. So we offer multiple avenues of training. We offer classroom training for our senior leaders. So a lot of our managing directors do come in and take the classroom training. And when we started that, it was a full day. And so getting a commitment from managing directors for a full day was fantastic. But one thing we did learn is senior people have a short attention span. So we've now got that down to an hour, where we do go through the strengths of hiring people on the spectrum, why we do it. Also looking at autism and the 4 areas of difference, and that helps us to look at neurodiversity as a whole. And then the final real success we've had there really is looking at retention rate. So the retention rate of the people that we bring in full-time employees to JPMorgan is over 90%. So that tends to tell you that when people come, they stay, and they do exceptionally well when they're here. So all of the things that a corporate side of our business look for are really around the cost of hiring and retaining our staff. So that figure is really important. I said we'd look at some job families, so I'm going to look at that in a moment. Let's look at really how we selected our jobs to start off with, and I just want to give you some high level of what we looked at. So jobs that we looked at were very rules bound, very sort of could be repetitive, had really good, strong operating procedures written down. Very queue driven, i.e. the high volumes pushed at the individuals are not pulling. We also ensured that there was an established training program, i.e. that business area had been involved in our strengths of hiring people on the autism spectrum training. The managers were getting the right support, the individual was coming in, and we were setting them up to succeed. We looked at our job descriptions and we ensured that they had great attention to the detail of what we needed for this skill set, that they were accurate, that they weren't regurgitated job specs that we've been using since the 1970s that listed everything from being able to make coffee right the way through. We really updated them. We really looked at the skill set that we wanted, making sure they were clear and concise, removed any industry jargon, and tried to avoid company acronyms, which is really difficult in our company, considering everything we do seems to have an acronym as we have it today. So some of the roles that we've looked at and we continue to do and find really successful. So software engineers speak themselves. Software engineer program is extremely successful no matter which country we're looking to hire in. Data analysts as well, so data inputting, etc., really key. Know your customer, know your client, so where you're looking at lots of legal paperwork. Now in that video you saw the blonde lady, that was Kim. Kim works in the same office that I work in, Bournemouth in the UK, and she did work in Know Your Client. She has now moved on into project management, but was very successful, and we've just moved another couple of individuals in our Bournemouth office into that area. Cybersecurity is key to our future and is where we're looking to really start to ramp up. Like many other companies now, that's a key area. So finding talent is getting harder and harder. So where you look for talent needs to widen, and clearly looking for people on the spectrum is the way to go. We have some front of house roles as well. When I started at the firm, I was brought in as a continual service improvement lead, and I then moved in to head the governance for cash operations. So again, very structured, very much around the legal side of how we operate, needed great attention to detail, working with regulators. Those kind of roles really suit the individuals that we brought in. So how do we make it successful and sustainable? Once the individuals are in, it's not just about getting them through the door. It's around how do we support them? How do we put a support network around them? How do we ensure that they have a career? How do they ensure that they have mobility and progression? All of those things we've now done. We have established a support circle, and that support circle is around working with the individual and just understanding how much or how little support they want. So we have things like a buddy system. So they will be assigned a buddy in the same center that they are. We hope it's somebody else on the spectrum, but if it's not somebody that is on the spectrum, it's somebody who's been through the training, who then has the support of people on the program if they need to ask questions. We make those buddies the buddy of the manager as well, so they can be the integrator between them should there be any difficulties. We assign a mentor, so somebody who can really help with their career development. And again, that will be somebody in a senior position who's been through the training, or anybody senior in our firm who has declared on the spectrum. I'm one of the most senior people to regularly talk about this, and I encourage more of my senior colleagues to do that. And clearly we have more people doing that now. We have established and have people at every grade across our organization, right through from our apprentices, our interns, through into our senior management, and even our managing directors. We have representation. We have people who have declared on the spectrum at those high roles. We promote health and wellness. We help individuals learn and understand about finances, because for many individuals this is their first job. We talk about work-life balance. We interact with their families and friends where we can, to ensure that they're getting the right support that's needed. We encourage them to join our business resource groups, where they get to meet other like-minded individuals. And of course, we have chat rooms that they can go into where there's other people on the spectrum, so they can always come together as a community and support each other. All of these kind of things, setting that environment, setting a mini ecosystem for them, as we do for many other groups, really helps them feel integrated and part of a team. We don't just stop at training the manager. We will train the colleagues around them, should they so wish that happens. We help them if they want to disclose to colleagues. We put a full arms around every individual. We can give them any kind of assistive technology they need. As you can see, I've got noise cancelling headphones on. I'm at home, so I don't need both on, but in an office, these are great. I can flick a switch, the office goes quiet. It has two things: I can't hear anybody, but the other thing, they all think I'm on the phone and they all stay away anyway. So that's great. I normally don't need to give them the go away stare when I'm having a bad day. So things like this are really great in the office. So making it sustainable is around how you support individuals once they're in your company. So how do you look to support them finding work? And this is where companies will vary as to how far they go back. Now, I want to just look at what is a typical neurotypical journey into the workplace. And the orange sort of egg shapes you can see there is the transition period. So when you're starting to think about leaving high school, go to college, universities, or join an apprenticeship, you start to do that as you get towards the end of your education. And your support network that you will sort of question and ask who's going to help you will be small as well. So you may talk with your parents, your friends, and in some schools, a career advisor. And once you do that transition, the support from those does tend to sort of fade away very quickly. As you go through college, or you're coming to the end of your apprenticeships, again, this is where employers probably will tend to engage a little more. I mean, clearly in apprenticeships, they've already engaged, but at college, university, to get internships, the employers will be starting to reach back into those colleges and say, hey, we're here. You know, come and see us. But that doesn't always hit neurodiverse individuals, because again, it's back to, they're always thinking, oh, big corporates, and I certainly was, big corporates are not interested in me. You know, what have I got to offer big corporates, etc. And this is where we have found great success. As you heard earlier, I spoke about our BESSA program. Reaching back into those areas has been a huge success to us. So if we look at what we've seen when we talk about neurodiverse, you can instantly see that support network, and when it starts, needs to start sooner and actually needs to last longer. And those transition points are really the points when it's at the most anxiety for an autistic individual. It's an area of great change. So the more support that can happen and can be given at this point is really key to how successful that individual's going to be. Because what we do see, and there's an added box there, is a great dropout of individuals on the spectrum who miss out on the workplace and then end up in unemployment or underemployment. And this is due to perhaps not the right help and support being there. So I'm going to highlight in a moment who we think should be getting involved. But equally, as big corporates or even small companies, where you start to interact doesn't shouldn't happen at the point of when an application hits your desk. If you really are truly wanting to find talent, you need to put the effort in and start working backwards and interacting. I'm introducing, again, unfortunately due to the pandemic, it is being pushed back a little bit further, but I'm introducing going back into schools and introducing cyber network to students as young as 13 to ensure that they see what they need to do, how they need to progress through school, what they can teach themselves that will put them in a great space to come and work at a company like ours. So who are those partners and what should they be doing? And the list I've got there is not exhaustive, but this is a bigger list of support that neurodiverse individuals will typically use. So your educators, your teachers, your careers advisors, anybody that they're interacting from health advisors, they should also be supporting, thinking about the workplace, preparing the individual for a workplace. Not-for-profit agencies are some of the biggest that we work with. They have a lot of individuals that come through to them for help, support, information. So interacting with them has been a real key to our success. Clearly, there are recruitment vendors that we use, expensive routes in sometimes, but again, necessary if you are not getting the job applications. We use mainstream vendors, but we also use specialist vendors that have proven to be extremely successful. Family, friends are always going to be key, so that's why we do like to reach out and do some training for family and friends of individuals and knowledge of what we do as a company. And social media is huge, so we're big on social media. I'm quite big on social media, LinkedIn, of sort of talking about the work that we do at JPMorgan, so people can see that actually, you know, we are serious about what we're doing here. This is not for charity. We don't do it for charity or publicity. We do it as a talent play. And the support that those individuals should be giving is having discussions around disclosure. That's a big topic. You know, I don't think it's a case of should I disclose. I think it's a case of when do you disclose and to who do you disclose. And I work very hard in the UK in encouraging people to actually put that on their resumes, their CVs, because what you do is you can say, hey, I'm you know, I have autism spectrum condition, but what that means is, and then list out the positive strengths that means against the job role that you're applying for. Certainly interview preparation, and again, interview support, asking for reasonable adjustments. All of these, we should be helping individuals to understand what is open to them and what they can do. Company training is key. So companies need to do more training and upskilling on neurodiversity throughout their management teams. But beyond that, we go beyond. We don't just do managers, we do our colleagues, because these individuals, one, are going to be managers of the future, some of them, but two, they're going to be the people doing the most interaction with our autistic individuals. So we want them to understand exactly how to do that in a positive way. And actually what we teach is you manage by individual. So any of our autistic individual is no difficult to manage than any other individual. I'd like to think that I'm not difficult to manage, but like everybody else, I have my moments. But again, the managers are fully equipped of how to deal with that, and there's a support network for them. So really giving the support through transition and getting involved as a company will give you a greater access to building your pipelines. So nearly there. Thank you for bearing with me. So the final thing that we've looked at is how to really improve our recruiting opportunities. And as I've gone through that, I've told you some of the things that we've done and that you as companies can also look at. Make sure you've updated your job specifications, refresh them, bring them up to date, make them very specific for what you're hiring. What is the skill set? Your top 5 things that you want should be the top 5 things in your bullet points. You know, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. If you want to put 10 things that you're looking for, should be things that, hey, if you've got them, great. But the top 5 is what you're looking for. Don't try and say that you're looking for all 10, because me as an autistic individual, I tend not to apply for jobs unless I tick all 10 boxes. How you look at a resume or CV needs to change. So we don't look at what individuals do right now. We read the whole resume. We've trained our recruitment teams to do that. Because right at the bottom, it could be, you know, they have a huge interest in JavaScript or whatever it is, but it's not in their education. It's not what they're doing now. One of our greatest successes was out in the US, where we brought an individual who had been a janitor in a supermarket for a long time. We brought them in as a VP in our technology. That's just how good they were, trained themselves, kept upskilling themselves. But they just couldn't get through an interview because it was too much of a social stigma to them, and it was really, really difficult to get through. When you start your recruiting, make sure you have a single point of contact. I know in big corporations, many people can end up calling that individual. We make sure that it's only one individual. We also ensure that when they are invited for an interview, when we go back to in-person interview, that they get a link to see the 360 view of our buildings, so they know, and it demystifies where they're going. They get to see a photograph of the individual who's going to be interviewing them. So again, breaking down some of the barriers of the, I don't know what I'm going to be facing today. The managers get interview training. And that's right the way from when they go and collect the individual from the reception area. In many of our offices, it's a long walk. So we encourage them to have reviewed the CV and talk about something the person's interested, or talk about the job. Do not talk about mundane things, certainly talking about the weather, etc. I remember that was done to me in one interview, and I panicked because I suddenly thought, what's the weather got to do with this? I've applied for an inside job. Why are you asking me about the weather? Am I now going to have to work outside? Those kind of things, as funny as they may be, make a difference. So ensuring that they can ask the right questions in the right way to get the right result from that individual. Ask one question at a time. If it's a multiple part question, break it down. Ask one, wait for an answer, ask the next one. We do provide interview guidance for the candidates. So we give them a little bit more around what's going to happen on the day, what kind of questions that we're going to ask. We have dropped what companies called the killer questions, which are things like, if you were a sandwich, what sandwich would you be and why? Has absolutely no relevance to the job. So why would you ask it? And that's one of the areas that people on the spectrum will really struggle with. And then we thought about the interview support mechanism. So we think about allowing the individual to have somebody accompany them to reception while waiting. And in some cases, we've even allowed that individual to go into the interview room with the person, because at the end of the day, what we're looking for is the skills they're going to bring. We're not looking at what anxieties, etc., might be around from the job interview when they first interact with people, because we know everybody's nervous and that this will help them settle, and we want to see the best of them. So think about all of those things when you're interviewing. It will give you a better chance of really seeing the skill set of the individual that's sat in front of you. Work hard with your management teams. We promote people very quickly, and we forget about the training around interviewing. We just assume that because they've now become a manager that they can actually run an interview. Never assume is one of the biggest things that we've learned. So thank you very much for listening to me for the last 35 minutes. I hope you found it a little bit interesting. Our program is successful, and we're only going to grow. We've been tasked to grow further in more countries and grow quicker. It's taken us a long time to get here because we've looked at all of our processes and procedures, and it's universal design. If we change this because we think it needs changing for somebody on the spectrum, we change it for everybody. The process changes for everybody. We do not make specific changes just for autistic individuals. So universal design, think about that as well. That's why our journey's taken so long. Updating all of those processes in all of the countries that we operate really has taken some time, but actually doing that has meant that we've set ourselves up to succeed, and we bring individuals set up to be successful.
Lee, thank you so much for an absolutely fantastic presentation. Lots of insight in there. JPMorgan have a brilliant model. I'm quite enamored with it. As I said earlier, it was a significant influence in how we built the ANZ Spectrum program, and it'd have to be the most integrated I've seen. I think for a lot of people and our delegates who are watching this, super inspiring what you're talking about. Probably a little overwhelming in terms of where do you start to see a program of this sort of success. So maybe you could just talk a little around what would be a good starting point for delegates that are out there that have been inspired about what you're talking about and want to take that next step to action.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming, and as I said to you, what we started was a pilot, so a small pilot in one business area, and really reviewed the successes before we moved on to the next one. So it's always about starting small. Don't try and boil the ocean in right from the beginning. You're never going to be successful if you're trying to say, hey, we're going to bring 300 people in the next 12 months. You know, that's not sustainable. You will not, you know, you're setting those individuals up to fail, and you're setting yourself up to fail. So pick a business area, really work and train the managers and support network, bring the individuals in, really help support, monitor them, and get the feedback. So some of the stats that you said at the beginning around our productivity rates being in excess of 40% for those individuals. Depending on the role, we've seen anywhere between 40, 45 and 145% more productive. So, you know, you get it right, these individuals will come in and will be excellent workers and staff, and will go on to have great careers. But start small, pick one area.
Yeah, that's some great advice, and we've got some questions coming in, and our first one is from Thomas. How would you encourage the people on the spectrum to seek contacts and interaction with these type of specialized recruiters? It is always already too confusing to apply for entry jobs. Where and how to reach these specialized recruiters and what to say to them?
Yeah, I mean, Google is a great device for finding these specialist recruiters, and then just begin your interaction. You know, they find out what companies they work with. Try and get the feedback and see what feedback has come out of individuals that are already working at these companies. Those are the, you know, it's a really tough market out there. So finding these specialist recruiters who know exactly the anxieties that you're dealing with are really key to great success. We have one or two companies that we use heavily in the US, and that we are actually making our global. We're looking to make our global recruiters in specialism, because they're able to interact with the recruitment teams as well, and really have a good understanding of jobs that really have proven to be successful for people on the spectrum, and they'll work harder to match your skills to the job spec coming in than your standard recruiters. Because again, a lot of these recruitment companies give you the opportunity to go in as staff of theirs. So you get to go into the company, really start to learn the job and understand, do you fit well in the company? Do you like the company? I mean, it works both ways. The company are obviously saying, does this individual fit for our company, etc. But it removes that pressure that you've got of saying, hey, I'm going into this company and now I've really got to work hard, otherwise they're going to get rid of me quickly. You get so much extra support from these specialist companies. So I know that initial engagement is really tough, but because they are specialists, they're really good at putting you at the most ease that you can be. And they will walk you through exactly how the process will go, whereas your standard recruiters don't. They just go, load your CV up, look for jobs, apply, on you go, we'll take our commission. Our specialist ones don't. They will work with you. They'll look to say, hey, how can we help you prepare for the job? So all of the things that I listed around that preparation, these specialist recruiters will do. So that's why it's worth, putting that little bit of anxiety in yourself and having a conversation rather than just doing the online version.
Yeah, good advice. And I think, Thomas, the other thing too is that, there's been many organisations that have spoken over these last 2 days that are in the exhibitor hall. I'd encourage you to connect with them. If I take the ANZ experience when we built the Spectrum program, we didn't use a recruitment company. We partnered with DXC Technology and we used a very specialised model through there. So there's a lot of different opportunities, but great number of connections today to be able to select from. Lee, our next question's from Kathy. It's, can you elaborate on the 4 areas of difference?
Yeah, well, the 4 areas of difference are how you get your diagnosis. So it's your social, it's your communication, it's those areas, sensitivity. So those 4 areas of difference is how diagnosis happens, particularly in EMEA, but it's standard. And looking at to get your diagnosis, you obviously have to be affected in all 4 areas. And to a relatively significant sort of level. So when we talk about those, particularly like communication, we'll look at what are the traits that you will see in communication, not making eye contact, not liking to shake hands, things like that you will see in individuals on the spectrum. We're not teaching our managers how to diagnose individuals. But what we're saying is, if you see these kind of traits, here's what you can do differently to see if you get a different reaction, because each of those traits can be traits of another neurodiverse condition. So we're saying to them, hey, they're not specifically going to be autistic individual, but these are traits managed by individual, and try this differently. So the 4 areas of difference, if you look them up, that's the 4 areas that you're tested in for your autism spectrum.
Yeah, I think incredibly important what you're saying there too, and really comes to that point around, making sure that you're training your managers and training your team. Someone earlier said that it's not about changing it's changing the culture of the organisation, not the individual. And I think that's a really poignant point. Our next question is, have you ever found that changes you have made to suit some people actually make things more difficult for others? In other words, has there been unintended consequences of changes that you've made?
No, I don't think, not necessarily. I would say what it has in some areas, like you would have in a massive organization, there has been a little bit of resentment from other individuals saying, hey, why are they getting a fixed desk? Why are they getting, noise cancelling headphones? But, simply we address that because it is universal design. You're entitled to exactly the same if you request it. These individuals have just spoke up and requested it. So if you want a fixed desk, let's have the conversation why you need one. If you need noise cancelling headphones, let us know why. So again, it's tackling those breakouts, because again, as you've just said, changing the culture takes time. And that's the big thing that we've done at JPMorgan, is worked hard at the culture. It comes right from the top. So Jamie Dimon, our CEO, talks a lot about the culture of inclusivity, and that resonates right the way down. This is spoken about, and it's not just words on a piece of paper or spoken. That is lived and breathed by all of our senior managers. Whenever they're coming round, they're ensuring that these kind of things happen. So that's got to be in your culture. Change your culture. That's been our biggest, obviously, concern when we're doing this is just other individuals going, hey, what about me? Because suddenly they're thinking, oh, other people are getting special treatment. Everybody gets treated the same. If you ask for it, we'll give whatever help and support for anybody in our firm.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point you make around culture. And I was reading on one of the Cornell articles, a quote by Anthony Persilio, and he says, we build it into the DNA of JPMorgan Chase and make sure it's part of the recruiting process, so that in 10 years, we don't have an autism at work program. It's just part of recruiting. Can you talk a little bit about how you've built that into the DNA for organisations that have started on this journey and are at that point where they're really looking at, how do I move from program to DNA, as he talks about?
Yeah, we talk very much about that. So Anthony was our global head of the Autism at Work program, and that's the big thing that we believe in, that universal design is what will get you there. So making changes for everybody. We might look at things through the eyes of somebody on the spectrum, but as we start through this journey and we started to look at the recruitment process, and as I said to you, or said in my speech, around sending out that 360 online view of the building that you're going to, the photograph that you're going to see of an individual, getting managers and people to look beyond what somebody's doing now in a job, make those changes for every individual, for every application, and soon enough that becomes part of your DNA, that you just are hiring for skill. You're no longer having to have a specific program to hire females, to hire autistic individuals. That's got to change. We shouldn't have those, and that's what Anthony talks about. Is our ultimate aim is, hey, we do ourselves out of jobs in 10 years, and we're not sat here. We don't have an Autism at Work program. It is just JPMorgan hiring skilled individuals that we need for each job. So universal design with everything you do. Don't just make a policy for one group of individuals, make it a policy that fits for everybody.
Yeah, that's great advice, and hire for skill. I like that. Another question we've got coming in: what do you do with people who are already employees that self-disclose? So how have you supported employees that after the program has started, they've felt comfortable to self-disclose in that arena?
Yep. So everything that we've designed then becomes available to that individual. So we as a program are there to support them. We will work with that individual and say, hey, what support do you need? Do you need reasonable adjustments? Do you want your business area to receive some training? We make sure that they're set up with a good mentor. So all of the things that I spoke about, that support circle, is then offered to that individual. They don't have to have come in externally and joined our program that way. The second they disclose, all of that becomes available to the individuals. That's why we train our managers to look for these kind of traits. We're not saying, hey, then have that conversation with an individual that says you're on the spectrum. Again, back to how do we make people feel comfortable? If we can train our managers to say, hey, if somebody acts like that, try managing in this way, will make that individual feel more comfortable. Doesn't mean that they have to disclose. It just means then that manager's getting the best out of that individual. So we love people to disclose, because then we can be clear and precise in the support that we're giving to that individual. But if they're not, it's finding ways that we can still change that culture without people feeling that they have to disclose to have that change.
Yeah, and building an environment, I guess, that says that everything that you're doing, and while it might be focused on autism and neurodiverse people, is actually beneficial to everyone across the organisation, in part of the universal design you talked about before. A follow-on question from that is, do you have employee resource groups for your autistic team?
Yes, we do. So, I mean, again, we have our general business resource group. So we'll have accessibility for our disability network. But then we have online chat rooms where we will have Autism at Work. I know we've got one that's called, I think, I Know Somebody with Autism. So people who are friends or family can join those networks and really ask questions and just interact. So yeah, we've tried to think about every way that we can communicate and give support to those individuals. So we do encourage them to get involved in the business resource groups, because then things like coffee mornings happen on different campuses. But again, if those individuals don't want to go to person, then we provide that online environment for them to do that from chat as well. And it just helps them build up, and their buddies will help. Our buddies are there to help them if they want to go along to a social event, but the anxiety builds, then a buddy is there to be able to help them to go. We also encourage allowing non-JPMorgan staff who are family and friends to actually help them transition into those environments, because it is, again, a bit of a falsehood to say that people on the spectrum don't want to go to social events. What it tends to be is their anxieties are too much for them. So think about how you can support that individual to attend and make it an environment fit for them. So think outside the box. What can you do to help them integrate?
Yeah, I love that idea of different groups and friend groups that, can connect into the network. Well, Lee, it has been absolutely amazing to listen to you today and to have this conversation. Absolute privilege to have hosted this section. I think what we take away from this is universal design and hire for skills. So thanks so much, Lee, for your time.